Hello and welcome. It is 7 o'clock and we are here to talk about Shadowdark, my new obsession. Um, Shadowdark is a role-playing game that is currently being kickstarted by the Arcane Library, and as you can see here, it calls itself Old School Gaming for New School Mechanics. And I am so hyped for this game. It's done incredibly well at the moment on Kickstarter, um, smashing their goal of $10,000, and they are over $700,000 at the moment, and I still think there's about 15 days to go. So huge congratulations to the Arcane Library team. This is going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm doing. Um, because I think it's worth the time and the effort. So first and foremost, we're going to do a primer. You can get hold of the player and game master quick start guides from their website. Go to their Kickstarter page. It will redirect you. All of the links to all of their website is down in the comments below. And you can take a look at it yourself, but to save you the trouble, I'm going to go through it a little bit by bit, maybe make some comments. I love it all, so it's going to be positive comments rather than negative. And we're going to take a look at this together. Then I have a few plans. I very much want to do an actual play of it, so running a live stream game. And also maybe do some sort of adventure world building with it as well, because I am so excited. So without further ado, let's delve into the Shadowdark and have a look at, first and foremost, the quick start guide for the players. So awesome artwork. As I say, the quick start guides are free. If we scroll down here, we can sort of see basically a primer for, this is the kind of thing that might be on the back of your DM screen, and you can sort of see a little bit of what is coming. First and foremost, the items, the cost, but quantity per gear slot. So gear slots are going to take place in the rule set. To carry a number of items equal to your strength stat, or 10. So your gear slots fundamentally are how many items that you can carry, once again making it very straightforward and very simple. Encumbrance without having encumbrance, which is very neat. All gear besides typical clothing fills one gear slot. Gear that is hard to transport might fill more than one slot. Again, clear, concise. If it's a bulky item, it's down to the game master to decide how many slots that's going to take up. Play a turn. Count down timers for your spells and other effects. Take an action and move up to near. Split up in any way. Move near again if skipping action. So again, this is giving us a few hints about what happens in the player's turn. The GM describes the results. Again, this next page is giving you a feel for the rules. Difficulty classes. This is a D20 system, so you'll be rolling a D20 and adding your modifiers to it, but an easy one is going to be DC 9, a normal one a DC 12, a hard one DC 15, an extreme one DC 18. Morale, they've got morale in here, which is interesting. This is great because what it does is it speeds up combats. If a combat has a large number of enemies, if the enemies are reduced to half their ranks, they need to do a wisdom check. If not, they run away. This speeds up and mops up. If if the players are winning, you don't need to grind it out to the very last body. Of course, players have the agency to give chase, no doubt. But interesting that morale is definitely in there. Dying, these would be your 5th ed death saves, but there's a death timer instead, which is 1d4 plus con modified rounds. On a turn, roll a d20, and if you manage to get that 20, you rise with 1 hit point. So you don't know how many rounds you've got before you're going to perish. It's randomized. So you roll the d4, add your con modifier. But they've still kept, or rather they have included rather than kept, that very cool critical hit on a death save from 5th ed means that you do get back up. And certainly at my table, when people are down and they roll that natural 20, it creates a great buzz and feel. So I'm very pleased that that is an official part of this rule set as well. We're going to read through the rules properly in a minute. I just want to give you a taster, just going down in the order that the things are doing. Stabilize, close range, DC 15 into check. On a success, target stops dying but is still unconscious. Fairly straightforward again. Distance and movement, this is an interesting thing, and they have clarified or simplified this. Close is 5 feet, near up to 30 feet far within sight. Again, really straightforward. Kind of the simple mechanics I would use when we're doing theatre of the mind. In terms of you just want to know, am I in range of the spell or the missile weapon? Can I hit them with my sword, etc., etc.? And this is great, very simple. You don't have to worry about grids really or anything else. You are close, near, or far. Climbing, dexterity or strength check. Interesting, you can use either. Half speed. You fall if you fail by 5 points. Again, nice, simple, succinct. We now know what happens, what causes you to fall. Perfect. Falling 1d6 damage every 10 feet. Fairly typical. What is atypical in this? Well, that's wrong. Obviously, in Shadowdark, your hit points are dramatically reduced, so that is going to hurt you substantially more. Moving through, you can move freely through allies. Interesting, it's really good if you're in a tight room. There's nothing more frustrating for characters if they can't reposition themselves. So that's great. What's even more interesting is if you need to pass a strength or dex check to move through enemies. So you can now move through enemies, which is really good in this system. Again, so you can kind of work out a degree of tactics or where you need to be. Swim half speed, strength check in rough water, con check if holding breath. If you fail, 1d6 damage per round until exiting the hazard. Again, very nice and simple. Okay, spell focus. This is interesting. Can't cast other focus spells while focusing. Make a spell casting check at the start of your turn. So that's interesting. Kind of a little like 5th Ed's concentration, but it sounds like you have to do a spell casting check at the start of your turn for the spell to make sure you are maintaining it. Success, the spell stays in effect till the start of the turn. Failure, the spell ends. You were focusing on, you do not lose the ability to cast the spell. Spoilers there. Distraction. Immediately make a spell focus check to maintain focus. So if you are distracted, that'll probably expand to maybe being damaged. It sounds like you're going to have to make another spellcasting check. There are some spoilers there as we move down to here. So credit where credit is due. Shadowdark Player Quickstart Guide for Shadowdark RPG. Writer, design and layout. All of this done by Kelsey Dion. And it's wonderful. You can see at the bottom there the sigil for the Arcane Library. Trade dress by these individuals, and there is some absolutely outstanding artwork in here as well too. Shout out to all of the artists. You can see all of their names there, and obviously the legalese information there. But we get to the contents. So the contents: Shadowdark, the basics, characters, overview, background, stats, ancestry, fighter class, priest class, thief class, wizard class, 4 classes, titles, alignment, languages, deities, gear, character names, level advancement, gameplay, rolling the dice, luck tokens, stats, making checks, time, turn order, crawling, resting, stealth and surprise, and combat. Then casting spells. I like these. Wizard mishaps. Scrolls and wands, spell attributes, spell lists, and spells. So that is the contents, 58 pages, covering everything a player would need to know. Okay, so Shadowdark. This is as we'd start doing a much deeper dive into it. What is Shadowdark? Shadowdark RPG is a fantasy adventure game where you and your companions delve into buried ruins, lost cities, spider-infested forests, and even fearsome dragon lairs in search of gold and glory. The Shadowdark is any place where danger and darkness hold sway. It clutches ancient secrets and dusty treasures in its rotting claws, daring fortune seekers to tempt their fates. With your adventuring companions at your side, you confront the Shadowdark's sinister traps, formidable magics and ruthless monsters. If you survive, you'll bring back untold riches plucked from the jaws of death itself, and before long you'll hear the Shadowdark's call once again. I mean, that in itself is beautiful, and this is what I love about this system. It takes me back to a more innocent time when I was first sort of playing the games, and all of that just makes me want to play this immediately. It's very concisely written, but it has got all of that juice in it that makes me want to take a big bite of this pie. Okay, what defines this game? Speed, danger, and simplicity. Magic is perilous and battles are fast and deadly. Being clever is crucial for survival. Again, it feels kind of like that old school, but I think there are some very neat mechanics that we're about to come across. Shadowdark RPG is rules light and intuitive. It encourages quick decisions rather than hunting through the rulebook for answers. Most definitely on board for that. In this game, a torch only holds back the pressing darkness for 1 hour of real world time. There isn't a moment to waste when the flames are burning low. This is a great mechanic. As far as I'm aware, and we should find out more about this, the game more or less runs in real time, and the game runs in an initiative order. So you always know when you need to be doing something, and you always want to be doing something, because as an hour passes, your torch burns down and you will be plunged into darkness. That doesn't sound particularly terrifying to those of you who play more modern systems, but there is a spin on it that we will be touching on as we explore this rule set. How do I play? Everything you need to get started playing is in this tome. Turn to the next section to get familiar with the basics. Again, beautiful layout, beautiful, easy to digest paragraphs. There is nothing there that is causing me any kind of confusion or kind of concern or trying to work out what is going on with what they're offering. So the basics. Oh, thank you very much. If this is your first time playing Shadowdark RPG, it is helpful to start with a pre-made character. Several adventurers are included in this book. These quick start rules cover the beginner characters for their first few adventures. The full rules go much further. Check them out at the arcanelibrary.com pages Shadowdark. I've got the link to their website in the comment section. You can easily go there and look that up yourself. Characters. You decide your character's actions and tell them to the referee or game master, the GM. The GM determines your actions are successful and describes the results. This back and forth between you, the GM, and your adventuring companions grows and shapes the game world. Always ask yourself, if you were really your character, what would you do right now? Describe an action. On your turn, describe an action you want to do. For example, you could say you're going to shoot your bow at a troll. The GM might ask you to make a check to determine whether your action succeeds. Pretty straightforward again. Movement. During your turn, you can move up to near, roughly 30 feet. You can break this movement up in any way. If you don't take an action, you can move near again. So you can take that dash action to put it into 5th edition terms. So you can sort of double move 60 feet on a turn. Rounds. Each person takes a turn starting with the GM and going clockwise. The GM controls the monsters and the environment and narrates how everyone's actions change the game world. Once everyone has taken their turn, that completes one round and a new round begins. Again, really succinct, really understandable. All of this might be a little bit basic for those of you who have been playing for some time, but I want to read this out because I think it is presented in such a beautiful way that it is easy to digest, and I kind of want to show that off as much as the system as well. The dice. You'll need a 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, 12-sided and 20-sided dice. Multiple 3d6 dice, roll them together and add them together. Advantage, roll 2 times and use the highest roll. Disadvantage, roll 2 times and use the lowest roll. So this system does use the advantage and disadvantage mechanic. Stats. Stats are your characteristics. Each stat goes from 3 to 18 and has a bonus or a penalty called modifier or mod. And those modifiers go from -4 to +4. So here we see there is the iconic statistics. We have strength, which is physical power, dexterity, which is agility, reflexes, constitution, endurance and resistance to injury, intelligence, logical ability, wisdom, instinct, willpower, charisma, appeal and presence. Checks. When attempting a risky action, roll a d20 and add a modifier. That's called making a check. The GM chooses the checks a linked to stat and a number called a difficulty class, DC. If the total of your d20 roll plus your stat modifier equals or beats your DC, your action succeeds. For example, the GM might say leaping over a narrow chasm requires a DC 12 strength check. Again, really straightforward. Hit points. Injuries cause you to take damage and you lose hit points, HP. Typical weapons deal 1d6 damage to your hit point, and you regain lost hit points after a night of rest. Characters at 0 hit points die in 1d4 plus constitution modifier rounds, minimum of 1. Dead characters are retired from play! Exclamation mark. So death is a thing. Hit points are a thing, and you regain lost hit points after a night of rest. Very interesting. One would assume that hit points can be regained through magical healing and potions as well, but we will see. What's next? You could play a whole game with just the basics, but once you're ready for more, the next chapter expands upon them. So that is the basics, and it's all very understandable. I'm not going to rapidly skip past this artwork at the moment. Again, I just love this artwork. It's reminiscent of old school games, but done in a very modern way. You've got the classic adventuring party here. You've got the torch burning. You've got what appears to be a dwarf with an axe, a beardy wizard with a staff, and quite possibly a rogue kind of trying to work out what is going on with the tracks there. There are mushrooms on the floor, rapidly covering skulls, and all of those pot marks in those pillars could easily be eyes watching. And there is, if you look carefully up at the top, a number of bats that are flying as well. Beautifully done. I'm a big fan of this artwork. And sometimes I think it's important to, to absorb that and take a moment or two to enjoy the artwork. So characters, and we've got a quote here. Both the wise and foolish risk their fortunes in the shadow dark. The darkness decides who is who. That's a very nice quote. So I'm going to move down to overview now. Overview. To make a Shadowdark RPG character, also called a player character or PC, grab your dice, a blank character sheet, and go through the next pages. You can also view the walkthrough at the Arcane Library's YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/the Arcane Library. So name, choose a worthy name for your adventurer. Ancestry. It's very interesting that they've chosen ancestry as a title for ancestral heritage, and very appropriate as well. Your character's cultural and ancestral heritage. Class, your character's job. Level, you start at level 1 and you gain levels by earning experience. XP, you start with 0 experience points. You gain XP based on the treasure and boons you earn from adventuring. So you have to do things. This has got that old school feel, no milestones. You go out, you grab the treasure and boons, and that is how you get better at what you do. Alignment and deity. Your character's cosmic link to the opposing forces of law and chaos or balanced neutrality. No mention of good and evil, which is interesting. In many ways, I really like that as well. I'm a big fan of kind of Michael Moorcock's Elric, and that just focus on law and chaos and neutrality. I don't feel I'm being shortchanged with the lack of good and evil. Plus, as we're all aware, if you've been playing any games for as long as I have, people's definitions of alignment vary very, very widely. Title. As you gain levels, your prestige grows. Your title is based on your level, class, and alignment. background, your history and past experience. You're adept at tasks related to your background. Stats, the 6 scores that determine your physical and mental characteristics. Hit points. Hit points represent the amount of injury you can sustain before you die. Taking damage from weapons, traps, spells, and other sources temporarily reduce your hit points. You regain hit points by resting. But there is more. AC, armor class. It's a type of difficulty class that shows how tough it is to injure you, whether because you're agile or because you wear armor. Your class determines the type of armor that you can wear. Your armor class starts at 10, plus your dexterity modifier. Wearing armor changes your armor class. Again, pretty straightforward. Attacks. The weapons you wield and how you use them to fight an enemy. See combat on page 50 for details. You can wield or weld the weapons listed for your class. So certain classes will be able to use certain weapons. Talents. Your special abilities. We all like a special ability. Your class, ancestry, and talent roles grant you these. The benefits of talents combine. Even the same talent rolled multiple times, so you can benefit from the same talent over and over. Spells. Some classes can learn and cast magic spells. The magic is covered on page 52. Gear. Your equipment. You can carry a number of items equal to 10, or your strength stat, whichever is higher. We covered that in the first pages, but this has clarified it. First level characters. Most games begin with first level characters, fledgling heroes who are ready to go on dangerous adventures. First level characters start with a background, stats, choice of ancestry, choice of class, one class talent roll, hit points equal to one roll of their class's hit point die, plus their constitution modifier. So no starting off on max hit points at level 1. You roll the dice, minimum 1. You could start playing a character with 1 hit point. You've got to love that. Title, choice of alignment, and 2d6 times 5 gold pieces to buy your gear. Very, very cool. Okay, background. Your background knowledge and skills might prove useful during your adventures. Work with the GM to determine if your background provides you advantages in given situations. Again, really, really straightforward. I like this. You can choose, but you can also roll on a D20 table. So we'll quickly run through these, and they're very evocative. They really give you quite a nice feel. Urchin, you grew up in the merciless streets of a large city. Wanted, there's a price on your head, but you have allies. Cult, initiate, you know blasphemous secrets and rituals. Thieves Guild, you have connections, contacts, and debts. Banished, your people cast you out for supposed crimes. Orphaned, an unusual guardian rescued and raised you. Wizard apprentice, you have a knack and an eye for magic. Jeweler, you can easily appraise value and authenticity. Herbalist, you know plants, medicines and poisons. Barbarian, you left the horde but it never quite left you. Mercenary, you fought friend and foe alike for coin. Sailor, pirate, privateer or merchant, the seas are yours. Acolyte, you're well trained in religious rites and doctrines. Soldier, you served as a fighter in an organized army. Ranger, the woods and the wilds are your true home. Scout, you survived on stealth, observation, speed. Minstrel, you travel far with your charm and talent. Scholar, you know much about ancient history and lore. Noble, a famous name has opened many doors for you. and surgeon. You know anatomy, surgery, and first aid. I mean, even that hasn't gone into any great details, but has kind of sparked kind of ideas about backgrounds. And I certainly would give advantage and disadvantage on certain roles. I love the fact that it kind of hints at sort of allies, NPCs that you might have ties with, and everything else. And whilst it's very, very straightforward and simple to understand, it sparks all of that very nice world building sort of inspiration to get going on. And of course, there's not anything here. You can always invent, make up, create other ones as well. But as a quick start guide, that is just perfect. Stats. I think many of us know what this is, but to determine your character's stats, roll 3d6 in order for each one. Note each total and modify those on your character sheets. Optionally, if none of your stats are 14 or higher, you may roll a new set of 6 numbers. That's very nice. They've put in a ruling, an official ruling, that if your character has not really got something that is going to give you a sort of benefit, a modifier of +2, you can re-roll your stats again. It does say note each total modifier on your character sheet. So looking at this, it's got that old school of you roll and then you kind of work out what your class is after you've rolled your stats, which is interesting. Strength, fight with the sword, bash open doors, swim. Important for fighters. Dexterity, shoot a bow, balance on a ledge, sneak silently, hide, or important for thieves. Constitution, hold your breath, resist poison, endure injury. Important for everybody, especially if you've got 1 hit point. Intelligence, cast wizard spells, decipher runes, learn new skills. Important for wizards. Wisdom, cast priest spells, detect the hidden, recognize omens. Important for priests. And charisma, convince creatures to be friendly and to resist mental control. So again, very succinct, very easy to get your head round. And the stats there, 1 to 18. Very nice that you need an 18 to get the +4. Need to be top of your game and get a very lucky roll there. 3d6, 3 6s on that, no modifiers. Very, very nice. Ancestry. Okay, these are the interesting ancestries that certainly are in the quick start rules. We have dwarf, brave, stalwart, folk sturdy as the stone kingdoms they carve inside the mountains. You know the common and the dwarvish language, and you are stout. So starting with 2 hit points, roll your hit points, gain with advantage. So you every time you gain hit points, you roll with advantage. So you would roll those 2 dice, which is interesting. They're using the advantage mechanic by the looks of this for rolls outside of just rolling the d20s, which is good. It kind of spreads it and it changes the game to be able to roll with advantage to gain your hit points. If you get a 1, but then you get a 6, that is a big difference. Elf, ethereal, graceful people who revere knowledge and beauty. Elves see far and live long. You know the common, Elvish and Sylvian languages. You have Farsight. You gain +1 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons, or a +1 bonus to spell casting checks. Interesting. Goblin. Green, clever beings who thrive in the dark, in dark, cramped places. As fierce as they are tiny, common and goblin languages. Keen senses, you can't be surprised. Now this is interesting because it means that coming up there will be a surprised mechanic. Then we move to halfling, small, cheerful country folk with mischievous streaks. They enjoy life's simple pleasures. You know the common language. You are stealthy. Once per day, you can become invisible for 3 rounds. I mean, that is quite a powerful ability to be able to disappear from sight. Very interesting. Another bit of text here. And so the primordial age ended, and the gods fled. In their place rose mortals, and they scattered the earth with their shining kingdoms and lost ruins. That has a very Conan-esque feel. More ancestries, half-orc, towering tusked warriors who are as daring as humans and as relentless as orcs. You know the common and orcish languages. You are mighty. You have +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with melee weapons. Human, bold, adaptable, and diverse. People who learn quickly and accomplish mighty deeds. You know common language and 1 additional common language. Ambitious. You gain 1 additional talent roll at level 1 or first level. This is interesting. We'll come on to talent rolls fairly shortly. Okay, try and get the page there. So we now look at the classes, and the quick start rules have 4 classes. We'll start off with the fighter class. Blood-soaked gladiators in dented armor, acrobatic duelists with darting swords, or far-eyed elven archers who carve their legends with steel and grit. Again, a really great paragraph there. They can use all weapons, they can use all armor and shields. Start off with 1d8 per level. That's their hit die. Hauler, you can add your constitution modifier, if positive, to your gear slots. You have weapon mastery. Choose 1 type of weapon, such as longswords, and you gain +1 to attack and damage with that weapon type. In addition, add half of your level to these rolls, rounded down. Wow, that is good if you want to be a combatant. You also have grit. Choose strength or dexterity. You have advantage on checks of that type to overcome an opposing force, such as kicking open a stuck door using strength, or slipping through a rusty chains using dexterity. Nice. And here we come to the talents. So, fighter talents. You roll 2d6, obviously getting a result between 2 and 12. On a 2, you gain weapon mastery with 1 additional weapon. On a 3 to 6, +1 to melee and ranged attacks. On a 7 to 9, +2 to strength, dexterity, or constitution stat. So your stats can go up. 10 to 11, choose 1 kind of armor. You get +1 armor class from that armor. Or a 12, if you get double 6s, you choose a talent, or +2 points to distribute to stats. Very nice. Another little quote here: nothing sings sweeter than a whistling axe, Jorbin, dwarf fighter. We come down to another beautiful piece of artwork. Tough. Would say this is what scale armor, longsword, shield, looking awesome. So I mean, it's interesting. You know, your entire class is there on a single page. Very rules light, very easy to understand. We come to priest class. Crusading Templars, prophetic shamans, or mad-eyed zealots who wield the power of the gods to cleanse the unholy. Weapons: club, crossbow, dagger, mace, longsword, staff, warhammer. Interesting. Um, so you can have a priest with a longsword. All armor and shields though. Hit points are 1d6 per level. Languages, you know, either celestial, diabolic, or primordial. You gain the ability to turn undead. You know the turn undead spell. It doesn't count towards your number of known spells. Now that's interestingly worded because it means that turn undead is a spell, so everything that mechanically makes spells work you would have to do if you want to try and turn undead. Deity, choose a god to serve who matches your alignment. See deities on page 30. You have a holy symbol for your god. It takes up no gear slots. Spellcasting, you can cast priest spells you know. You know 2 tier 1 spells of your choice from the spell list. Each time you gain a level, you choose a new priest spell to learn according to the priest spell known table. For casting priest spells, see page 52. So again, start off with the bare basic 2 spells that you have to choose. Priest talents, again rolling 2d6. 2, gain advantage on casting 1 spell you know. Now that is interesting when we come on to spell casting because it sounds you need to roll. 3 to 6, plus 1 to melee or ranged attacks. 7 to 9, plus 1 to priest spell casting checks. 10 to 11, plus 2 to strength or wisdom stat. 12, choose a talent or plus 2 to distribute to your stats. So the 12 is certainly the same as the fighter. Then we come to pre-spells known. So you can see that this is levels 1 to 10. And as far as I'm aware, that is the cap at the moment. Even in the main rules, as far as I'm aware anyway. Level 1 you get 2 spells, level 2 you get 3, and so on. But as you get to level 10 you will know 5th level spells. Well, level 9 means you get your very first one. And there is a dwarf turning undead. Great. Then we move to the thieves. Thief class. Rooftop assassins, grinning con artists, or cloaked cat burglars who can pluck a gem from the claws of a sleeping demon and sell it for twice its worth. Weapons, you can have a club, a crossbow, a dagger, a short bow or short sword. Armor, leather armor, mithril. Leather armor, I think that is mithril chainmail, there's no comma there. But as a thief, you only get 1d4 hit points per level. You have the backstab ability. If you hit a creature who is unaware of your attack, you deal an extra weapon die of damage. Add an additional weapon die of damage equal to half. Add additional weapon die of damage equal to half your level. Excellent. Thievery. You are adept at thieving skills. You have the necessary tools of the trade secreted on your person. They take up no gear slots. So this is the same as the priest. Your tools of the trade, as it were, aren't taking up any gear slots. You are trained in the following tasks and you have advantage on any associated checks. Again, pretty straightforward. You've got climbing, sneaking and hiding, applying disguises, finding and disabling traps, delicate tasks such as picking pockets and opening locks. So you have advantage on all of those things because you are a thief. Pretty straightforward and again, very cool. Thief talents. On a 2, gain advantage on initiative rolls. Reroll if a duplicate. 3 to 5, your backstab deals +1 dice of damage. 6 to 9, +2 strength and dexterity or charisma stat. 10 to 11, +1 to melee and ranged attacks, and 12. As like the other classes, choose a talent or +2 points to distribute stats. Oh, and we get a thief picture as well. Look at that. See, climbing down to that chest. Some kind of flooded room. I'm loving it. Then we move to the wizard class. Rune tattered adepts, bespectacled magi, and flame conjuring witches who dare to manipulate the fell forces of magic. Weapons, dagger, staff, armor none. Hit points 1d4. Languages, you know 2 common languages and 2 rare languages. Learning spells. You can permanently learn a wizard spell from a spell scroll by studying it for a day and succeeding on a DC 15 intelligence check. Whether you succeed or fail, you expend the spell scroll. Spells you learn in this way don't count towards your known spells. Interesting. So, treasured items, spell scrolls for wizards. Spellcasting, you cast a wizard spell you know. You know 3 tier 1 spells of your choice from the wizard spell list. Each time you gain a level, you choose a new wizard spell to learn according to your wizard spell known table. And on page 52 it tells us all about spell casting. So wizard spells here 3, 4, and a bit like the priests, you get your 5th level at 9 and your 2nd, 5th level at 10. Wizard talents. To make one random magic item. See the GM Quickstart guide. That's interesting. So you can make magic items. +2 to intelligence stat or +1 to wizard spellcasting checks. Gain advantage on casting one spell you know. 10 to 11, learn one additional wizard spell of any tier and choose a talent or +2 to distribute to stats. Bearing in mind these are cumulative, it will no doubt tell us a little way down when we get to level up our talents. Titles. This is quite a nice, just little flavoursome thing. As you gain levels, your title changes to reflect an increase in your fame or infamy. Your legend begins to precede you as your renown grows for good or ill. An improvised title could present opportunities that were previously out of your reach. So as you go up your levels, for instance, as a fighter, you might be a squire, cavalier, knight, thane, lord, lady. Chaotic, you might end up being a warlord. These are flavoursome, very nice, but there's titles for fighters, for priests, no doubt for thieves. We've got lawful, who's a boss, and wizards. But some of these 9th and 10th level titles seem to indicate that the system is designed to be capped at 10th level. There's not much further you can go, being a bandit queen or bandit king. Same with like an archmage, etc. So that's interesting. Just quickly look at this picture. He's got his grappling hook. He's got a little pigeon right next to him, and he's watching. It's got a great feel to it. Alignment. This is an interesting one because alignments are sometimes controversial. I'm loving that picture, by the way, of Death Knight Lich. Alignment defines your role in the clash between good and evil, which is interesting because they've not mentioned good and evil. All creatures are connected to the eternal conflict waged by law, chaos, and neutrality, whether they know it or not. Law is benevolence, chaos is malevolence, and neutrality is impartial, favouring nature. Choose one of these following 3 alignments. Chaotic. Chaotic characters align themselves with destruction, ambition, and wickedness. Chaotic characters adopt a survival of the fittest mentality. Lawful. Lawful characters align themselves with fairness, order, and virtue. Lawful characters operate from a good of the whole mentality. Neutral characters find balance between law and chaos. They align with the cycle of growth and decline, adopting a nature must take its course mentality. Again, with such a potentially complex discussion about alignment, that is all very beautifully put, and I very much as a GM, and certainly would be as a player, kind of now understands the concepts of the chaos, law, and neutrality in this game setting. I really like it. Very straightforward again. This is what we want. This is what we want. We come to languages. So the languages are split into common and rare. We've already discussed, based on your ancestry and your class, which ones you would know. So you've got common, dwarvish, elvish, giant, goblin, Merran, orcish, reptilian, sylvian, and thanian, and they represent all of these ancestries here. The rare languages are kind of what I would consider to be planar languages, so celestial, diabolic, draconic, and primordial. Perhaps not planar then, but more difficult to learn, not easily uncovered. We also have a quote here: language is the key to the most important doors. And once again, I love that. That is such a good quote. Krieg, human wizard, said that. Ooh, deities. I mean, obviously, this is in Shadowdark's world. As a GM, as a world builder, you create your own world with different deities, but we will have a look at these now. The many gods of the universe are the personifications of law, chaos, and neutrality. The most well-known gods are listed here. A character may worship any deity or none. Priests must choose one god to serve faithfully. A priest deity can revoke the gift of spellcasting if the priest commits blasphemous acts. Interesting. Most folk worship one of the four lords, the lawful, neutral gods who stand for justice, order, and mercy. Malevolent beings worship one of the dark trio, chaotic deities whose evince power, destruction, and cruelty. There were once 9 primary gods, but 2 are the lost, forbidden, or forgotten. Many folk still refer to the 9 in the oaths they swear, and ancient stories always begin with beneath the eyes of the 9. Again, a beautiful bit of flavour. So you have Saint Teragnis, lawful, legendary knight who is the patron of most lawful humans. She ascended to godhood long ago and is the embodiment of righteousness and justice. Gede, I would pronounce that neutral. Gede is the god of feasts, mirth, and wilds. Gede is usually peaceful, but primal storms rage when her anger rises. Many elves and halflings worship her. Madeira, the Covenant, lawful again. Madeira was the first manifestation of law. She carries every law of reality, a dictate called the Covenant, written on her skin in precise symbols. Very, very nice imagery there. Then there's Ord, who's neutral. Ord, the unbending, the wise, the secret keeper. He is the god of magic, knowledge, secrets, and equilibrium. Memnon, chaotic. Memnon was the first manifestation of chaos. He is Madeira's twin, a red-maned leonine being whose ultimate ambition is to rend the cosmic laws of the Covenant from his sister's skin. Well, that just escalated. Ramlat, chaotic. Ramlat is the pillager, the barbaric, the horde. Many orcs worship him and live by the blood rite, a prophecy that says only the strongest will survive a coming doom. Then we have Shun the Vile, chaotic again. Shun whispers arcane secrets to sorcerers and witches who call to her in the dark hours. She schemes to displace Ord so she can control the vast flow of magic herself. I love the way that this Parthenon has got kind of a sort of there's a hierarchy, a connection between the all, that they are working against each other. It's that kind of mythic things that you hear about, sort of, you know, the Greek gods or the Roman gods. The lost, 2 of the 9 are lost to the ages, their names expunged from history and memory, yet their whispered legends linger in ancient forbidden tasks, the secret deep places. That's quite nice. So the next page is gear. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's your standard stuff that you would buy as someone that is just about to go on an adventure down into the Shadowdark. Arrows, backpack, caltrops, coin, crossbow bolts, crowbar, flask or bottle, flint and steel, gem, grappling hook, iron spikes, lantern, mirror, oil flask, pole, rations, rope, torch. Torch is again mentioned here, sheds light to a near distance, burns for 1 hour of real time. And again, that's neat, a near distance, telling us how close that light goes. The cost of this, and you can see that multiple items will take up gear slots. So coins, you can carry 100 coins. First 100 are free to carry, but then it starts taking up gear slots. So if you was lucky to find a horde, you only got a certain amount. Again, a very nice mechanic to represent encumbrance without it being a nightmare to manage, basically. And expands upon this down here, gear slots. When you carry a number of items equal to your strength stat, you can carry a number of items equal to your strength stat, or 10, whichever is higher. Unless noted, all gear beside typical clothing fills 1 gear slot. Gear that is hard to transport might fill up more than 1 slot. Really nice, simple mechanic that makes going down, delving, gaining loot important to know whether you can actually retreat with the items that you've got. So we come to a crawling kit. A crawling kit costs 7 gold pieces, uses 7 gear slots, and contains the following. This is a rapid way that you could quite easily get your equipment. You know how much it costs, you know what you've got. Then we come on to armor. So leather armor costs 10, chainmail costs 60, plate mail costs 130, a shield is 10. Mithril metal armor only is ×4 of that, and I love that. One of my biggest banes in 5th edition is adamantine and mithril armor. They cost like 500 gold pieces, where a suit of plate mail costs 1,500, and you kind of need to go, well, actually we're going to have to add that cost onto the price of the armor. This is just a much easier way to communicate that information, that it's just literally a multiplier of the cost. So nicely done again. Armor class tells you what your armor is. You get +2 your armor class if you've got a shield but does occupy one hand. Plate mail gives you a base armor class of 15. Chainmail is 13 plus your dex mod. Leather is 11 plus your dex mod. And some armor gives you disadvantage on stealth or swimming and the like, everything that you would expect. We come on to weapons. Pretty straightforward weapons. Tis rule light after all. We can see that a lot of weapons do between 1d4 and 1d10. They cost the money that he's listing there, everything from, there are copper pieces in this system by the looks of it, 5 copper pieces for a club, going up to 10 gold pieces or even 12 gold pieces for a greatsword. They do varying amount of damages, but these are the rules of the weapon. So you've got finesse, you can use your strength or dexterity when attacking with this weapon. Loading, you must forgo moving to reload this weapon, so that's interesting. It's not, you can't do it, but you have to stay still. Thrown, you can throw this weapon to make a ranged attack with it using your strength. Two-handed, you must use this weapon with 2 hands. Versatile, you can use this weapon with 1 or 2 hands, using the higher damage dice if you're wielding it with 2. Weapon types: melee weapons strike at arm's reach, and range weapons strike at distance. Range, you can use a weapon at close, near or far range. Pretty straightforward, really easy to understand. Then we move to, we're kind of about halfway through the book now. I think it's going to get faster. Character names, some ideas for names for characters. Of course, you can always invent your own, but coming up with a name for a character is always perhaps one of the hardest things to do. There is also another nice sort of quote here. Whoever named you sure got it right. Relina, halfling thief, to Rot Breath, the troll. Very good. Okay, now we're coming on to juicy bits. Level advancement. Okay, experience points. XP represents your learning influence and increasing the skill. XP awards are based on the quality of the treasure and boons you gain during a session. The GM can award XP right away or at the end of each session. So that simple sentence says the GM can award XP right away or at the end of each session. Leveling up. To gain a level, you will need to earn your current level times 10 XP. Once you reach a new level, your total XP resets back to 0. You get any new titles, spells, and talent improvements listed for your level. Your maximum HP increases. You may also gain a talent roll. So there's a little chart there. So to get from level 1 to level 2, you need 10 experience, and then get to level 2, you need 20 experience. Everything resets, so you would need that 20, then you would need 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Of course, they've said to get from level 10, you need... oh no, it's not 2. I've read that wrong, haven't I? That is wrong. No, it's not. To gain a level, you need your current level times 10. No, I've said it right. I am right. So the 100 experience points at level 10 is to reach that mythical level 11. Who knows, it might come with an expansion. Talent roll. You gain 1 roll on your class's talent table when you reach the indicated level. Duplicate talent stack unless noted. Increased hit points. Roll your class's hit point die. Add it to your maximum hit points. Again, pretty straightforward and very rapid to do. We've got a quote here. Certain doom is a challenge, not a promise, by Igra, half-orc priest. Another magnificent piece of artwork here. It's almost like one of those magic eye posters. As the more you look at it, the more horrifying it gets as you realise all of these be tentacled. I don't know. I would list these as maybe carrion crawlers, but who knows what they are in the Shadowdark. And again, you've got the key adventuring party that is valiantly trying to make a stand, quite possibly a last stand against them. You've got to love that artwork. It's beautiful. So we come to gameplay. The Shadowdark is like a sleeping bear. Only go near it if you have a 10-foot pole and are prepared to die. Well, we're getting into the meat of it now. This is the actual rules of the game. We have covered in the first hour, sort of slowly reading it through, how to create a character. Hope that has been useful for you. We're going to continue. We're going to go through this gameplay section now. So, gameplay, rolling the dice, advantage. When you have advantage on a roll, it means you are in a strong position to succeed. For example, you might be attacking from the high ground, or you might have just failed a task and now you have the insight in how to succeed if you try it again. To roll with advantage, roll the same dice twice and use the better result. A mechanic that we are very familiar with, but what is different here is this is all dice. We have already mentioned that I believe dwarves can roll their hit point dice with advantage. Disadvantage. When you have disadvantage on a roll, it means you're in a strong position to fail. For example, you might be trying to strike an enemy while blinded by sand, or navigating a maze whilst confused by a disorientating poison. To roll with disadvantage, roll the same dice twice and use the worst result. I love advantage and disadvantage. It's a great way to kind of skew rolls, give a sense of success or failure sort of before, but without clunky mathematics. Cancelling. If you have both advantage and disadvantage on a roll, they cancel each other out. So pretty straightforward. Right, natural 20s. When a d20 roll shows a 20, what you're doing succeeds to the maximum capacity. An attack roll automatically hits and is a critical hit. See damage on page 51. So we do have critical hits and critical successes. I like this. It gives a great buzz at the table. Natural 1. When you roll a d20 die, when a d20 die rolls and shows a 1, what you're doing fails to your maximum capacity. An attack roll automatically misses, might even strike an ally. Interesting. The D6 decider. There's a random chance for an outcome, such as whether a drop torch goes out. The GM calls for a D6 roll. A 1 to 3 results in the worst outcome for the players, and a 4 to 6 results in the better one. So fundamentally, to keep the game going, to stop circular discussions, you just do that. Roll a d6, 50-50 chance of positive or negative for the players. Luck tokens, interesting. Sometimes the GM awards a luck token to a player for exceptional role-playing, heroism, or just plain coolness. Each player can only have one luck token at a time. You can cash in a luck token to reroll any roll you have just made. You must use the new result. You can also give your luck token to a companion. Now that is, I wouldn't say new, sort of luck, fortune, fate, all of these kind of ideas exist in the games, but again, very succinct, very good. And in such what could be a deadly sort of game. You could start because first level you could have a character that has 1 hit point. Having some kind of mechanic that can help you along the way, a touch, I think is key and very, very cool. How many to give? A GM might award 3 to 5 luck tokens per player during a session with a pulpy heroic feel. Alternatively, the GM might only give 1 luck token per player during a game session that is grim, difficult and dark. So this is how they sort of communicate the feel of the game or the campaign. If it's larger than life and heroic as best as it can be, you facilitate giving out these luck tokens. If you want it to be grim, dark and deadly, 1 luck token. Again, very easy to understand, very cool. But we come into the final sort of paragraph here. Big sacrifices, moving speeches, or incredible daring maneuvers might be worthy of a luck token, whether or not the character's actions was successful. Again, this is what I love about this system. That says it all for me. You do the thing that your character would do, and it doesn't matter about your stats. Just do it, and you might be rewarded with these luck tokens. It's very, very cool. Love that. Using stats. Under certain tasks fall under specific stats. The following examples illustrate common uses for each one. Difference between intelligence and wisdom can be tricky. If in doubt, remember wisdom is for sensory, acuity and instinct, while intelligence covers knowledge and logic. So strength, smashing open locked doors, bending the bars of a prison cell or sewer grate, lifting a large rock overhead, stopping a runaway ship's helm from spinning. Dexterity, diving away from a trap that flings a hail of needles, disabling a tripwire without activating it, scaling a sheer castle wall, falling on lookers with a sleight of hand. Constitution, holding your breath underwater, withstanding intense pain, resisting the effects of poison. Intelligence, giving first aid to a dying character, recalling the path through a twisting maze, finding food and water sources in the wilderness. Wisdom, spotting a well-hidden enemy, determining the direction of a faint noise or smell, deciphering the sounds on the other side of a door. And last but not least, charisma, performing ventriloquism, applying a disguise, rallying allies who are terrified by a monster. Fairly straightforward. But we'll come on to making checks now. When to roll. Usually you succeed at what you're trained to do without needing to roll a check. Now let us just read that again, because this is something I really like. Usually you succeed at what you're trained to do without needing a check. So if you're proficient in it, I don't mean you have proficiency, I just mean your character does this, then normally you don't need to roll. For example, a wizard is always able to read magic runes, and a thief always finds a trap if searching in the right area. If you take the time to scan the sky for threats or examine a stretch of wall for a secret door, you simply succeed. That is great, because in Shadowdark, in dungeon crawls, you kind of want some of these secrets to be found. It also means that you just do this. You don't have to optimize a character to have a massive perception. And it's a great leveler because everybody can do this. Social encounters, I say everybody can do it, obviously. You succeed at what you're trained to do. Social encounters usually rely on what you say rather than charisma checks. Narrating a moving speech or using secret information you gathered to influence a NPC does not require a check to succeed. The GM asks for a check when the following is true. The action has negative consequences for failure. The action requires a skill. There is time pressure. That is great because it just moves the game along. Um, you don't need to be making a skill check every 5 feet of a corridor that you're going down looking for a trap. It's automatically assumed that you're moving forward. You can say I'm searching for traps as you move down it, and there's no need to slow the game down with rolls every 5 feet. Difficulty class. The 4 standard DCs represent how difficult an action is. So easy DC 9, normal DC 12, hard DC 15, extreme DC 18. Bearing in mind, even if you've got a stat modifier of 18, you're adding +4. So for a hard check, you needed 11 on the dice. And for an extreme check, you need a minimum of 14. And that's if you've got an 18, the stat of you trying to use. So whilst the things that you're trained in are automatic, when it comes to something that's a challenge, it could well be a true challenge, and I love that. Opposed checks. If multiple creatures are working against each other on conflicting tasks, an opposed check decides who succeeds. To make an opposed check, each participant rolls the relevant stat check at the same time, even if it's not their turn. The highest results in a win. Reroll ties. So there is no, oh, but I initiated it, so therefore I've done it. If the rolls are the same, you just re-roll it again. You need one of those rolls to be the highest. Okay, this is where we start getting to something really interesting. Time. Real time. Time passes in the game world at the same pace it's passing in the real world. 1 minute or hour of game time is equal to 1 minute or an hour in real time. This matters for tracking light sources because most light sources only last for 1 hour of real time. If you can't track real time in your game, assume 1 hour is equal to 10 rounds. Turns and rounds. A turn is a player's moment to describe what their character does to the GM. Players act one by one on each of their turns. Some turns need a bit of room to breathe. A character who is speaking with someone can make a few reasonable exchanges back and forth. A round completes when each person has taken their turn. This is interesting because the game has this initiative and has this real-time sort of tracker. And this is because you need to ensure that you don't run out of light. Time passes. Every moment in a game doesn't have to be accounted for in real time. For example, if the characters want to spend 10 minutes examining a room from top to bottom, the GM and the players can agree that time passes. When the time passes, the GM and players move any timers down by that amount. So you don't have to say, well, we're going to spend 10 minutes exploring this room and then you have to wait 10 minutes before you move on. You can say, right, you've done that. You've lost 10 minutes from your light source. Minutes pass. Effects with duration of rounds expire. The GM rolls one random encounter check that occurs on a 1 to 3 on a d6 while this time is passing. Hours, days pass. Effects with a shorter duration than the time passes expire. GM uses overland travel rules to check for encounters. After resolving encounters, the game worlds fast forwards to the new point in time. So you can pass time if it is agreed. Okay, turn order. Initiative. Shadowdark RPG is played in turn order right from the start. At the beginning of the game, the GM establishes initiative or the order in which the players act. Everyone rolls a d20 and adds their dex modifier. The GM adds the highest dex modifier to any monsters if relevant. The person who rolled the highest takes the first turn, and then the turn order moves clockwise from that individual. Player's turn. The player counts down any personal timers for spells and other effects. 2. The player takes an action and may move to near, split in any way. The player can move Near, again, if skipping an action. The GM describes what happens as a result of that player's turn. GM's turn. The GM counts down any timers not tracked by the players. The GM then checks for a random encounter if needed. The GM then takes actions to make movements for any relevant creatures or environmental effects. And then 4, the GM describes what the character notices as a result of those previous steps. Encounters. An encounter occurs when a challenge presents itself and stops the character's progress. An encounter could include a monster charging out of the darkness, a sinkhole breaking open the ground, or a town guard halting the characters. The GM rolls for the chance of an encounter every few rounds, depending on how dangerous the character's environment is. Then we come to what is called crawling. Characters are in crawling rounds when not in combat. The Shadowdark. The Shadowdark is any place where darkness, danger, and myth reign supreme. It could be amongst the crumbling ruins buried inside a forgotten mountain stronghold. It could be within the spell-wrought castle of an undead sorcerer who probes the universe for arcane secrets. It could be beneath the cursed trees where squirming abominations boil out of a black pit, pulping all in their path. Vision. All characters need light to see, but that is not true for the darkness-adapted beings of the Shadowdark. Any area outside the character's light source is in total darkness. Yes, my friends, your characters do not have dark vision, but the things of the Shadowdark are adapted to the dark. Light sources. Most light sources last up for an hour of real time and illuminate a limited area. New light sources are lit while another is already active. Ride along on the current timer. That said, the GM should use their best discretion to avoid being punitive. If there isn't much time left on the current timer and characters light a new torch, snuff out the old light source and start a new timer. There should only be one active light timer, except in rare cases. Total darkness. While in total darkness, a creature who is not darkness adapted has disadvantage on most attacks it tries to undertake as determined by the GM. Also, the environment becomes deadly. Check for random encounters every crawling round. Movement. Distances are broken up into close, near, and far. Near is 30 feet, far is within sight. Climbing, we've covered this earlier. Strength or dex check. Climb half your speed. Fall if you fail by 5 points. You'll take 1d6 damage for every 10 foot falling. You can move through allies freely. You must pass a strength or dexterity check to move through enemies. And swimming, make a strength check to swim half your speed or a constitution check to hold your breath. If you fail, you take 1d6 damage each round until you exit the hazard. Regroup. During crawling rounds, the GM can ask the players if they want to regroup. To regroup, any PCs within eyesight or earshot of each other who are immediately able to move freely may immediately move within near of each other. Then initiative continues as normal. It's a way of getting the party back together. Conditions. Some effects imposed a condition on a character such as blindness from a blast of fungal spores or the inability to move whilst tangled in a giant spider's web. Advantage and disadvantage apply to most situations, as does common sense. For example, a blinded character has disadvantage on tasks requiring sight, and a character stuck in a giant spider web can't move until freed. Actions. Whilst crawling, characters can take actions that might include prying a gem from a statue, sneaking up on a slumbering manticore, swimming to the bottom of an oily pool of water, tapping on a suspicious wall to check for a hidden door, scanning a room for signs of hidden enemies, give a rousing speech to a group of fearful townfolk. Fairly straightforward again, very, very intuitive, really, really easy to run, but also easy to give narrative agency to players as well. Resting. Injured characters can rest to recover from their wounds. To rest, a character must consume a ration and sleep for 8 hours. Sleep can be broken up for light and routine tasks, such as taking a turn on a watch. Interruption. Each stressful interruption of rest, including combat, requires the affected character to make a DC 12 Constitution check. On a failure, the character consumes a ration but gains no benefit from resting. So yes, if you are interrupted, sleeping in a dangerous place, you are not going to get the benefits. Success, though. A character who successfully rests regains all lost hit points and recovers any stat damage that was not permanent. Additionally, some talent spells or items regain their abilities to be used after a successful rest. Danger level. Characters can rest anywhere, but doing so inside a dungeon or perilous environment carries a high chance of failure due to the risk of random encounter. While the characters are resting in a dangerous environment, the Game Master checks for random encounters using the overland travel candidates. Unsafe, you check every 3 hours. Risky, you check every 2 hours. Deadly, you check every hour. Campfire. In many cases, adventurers need a light source whilst resting. Characters can combine 3 torches into a campfire that can't be moved once lit. Campfire lasts up to 8 hours while at least character remains near to it and casts a light out to the near distance. So yeah, you can use up 3 of your torches to keep that light, which is what you need to keep the deadly encounters from being put upon you. I love all of that. Again, it's very intuitive, very succinct, and it creates a feel of peril. You know, do we rest in the dungeon or do we leave and then have to fight our way back in? Stealth and surprise. Hiding and sneaking. Creatures who are hiding or sneaking must succeed on a dexterity check to go undetected by other creatures within eyesight or earshot. The GM determines the frequency and difficulty of the checks based on the environment. GM might secretly roll the check for a character if knowledge of the outcome impacts the situation. Hiding limitations. Creatures can't hide whilst other creatures are able to see them, even at a casual glance. I love that paragraph. I love that paragraph. It's very clear. Creatures can't hide while other creatures are able to see them. It might also be impossible to hide if there is nowhere for a creature to stay out of sight. All of this, again, is intuitive, again, makes perfect sense. Detecting a hiding or sneaking creature requires the searcher to actively look or listen. Looking in the right place automatically reveals the hidden creature. Looking in the right place automatically reveals the hidden creature. Makes sense. Otherwise, the searcher must succeed on a wisdom check to perceive a hiding or sneaking creature. This is interesting. Surprise. A creature who begins its turn undetected has advantage of surprise. If combat hasn't started yet, those with surprise take 1 turn before the combat initiative roll. A creature has advantage on the attack rolls against a surprised creature. Attacking from hiding gives away the attacker's position afterwards unless the GM determines otherwise. Again, it really clears up the concept of surprise. Now we're coming to the meat. Excuse me a moment. Combat. When a fight breaks out, combat rounds begin. Determine surprise. The GM determines if any creatures are unaware of each other. A creature who surprises another takes one turn before new initiative order is rolled. Combat initiative. After surprise turns, the GM calls for a new initiative. Everybody makes a dexterity check. The GM uses the highest dexterity modifier of any monsters. The person with the highest result takes the first turn. Turns go clockwork from that person. So it's very interesting in the fact that it goes clockwork. So you just need someone to be good with your initiative roll. Combat turns. Characters can take one action and move near on their turn, splitting up the movement however they want. Characters can move again if they don't take an action. Actions in combat. Melee attack. Melee attacks use melee weapons. Roll a 1d20 plus your strength modifier plus talent bonuses. You hit the target if your total is equal to or greater than its armor class. Ranged attack. Ranged attacks use ranged weapons. Roll 1d20, use your dexterity modifier plus talent bonuses. You hit the target if your total is equal or greater than its armor class. Cast a spell. Casting a spell takes one action. See spell casting on page 52. We're almost there with spells. Improvise. Do an improvised action such as swinging across a ravine on a vine. The GM might determine it requires a check or an attack roll. Multitask. Characters can do small parallel tasks on their turn, such as standing up, speaking, activating a magic item, or quaffing a potion. This doesn't typically use their action. So it looks very much like there's no 3 actions, there's no bonus actions, item interactions. You basically get a move and an action, and plus you can do minor things as well. But there's more. Damage. When you hit a target with an attack or a spell, you damage it. Roll your weapon or spell's damage dice plus talent bonuses. The DM subtracts that amount from the target's hit points. Knockout. You can choose to knock a creature unconscious instead of killing it if you reduce it to 0 hit points. Critical hit. You deal a critical hit if you roll a natural 20 on an attack roll or spellcasting check. For a weapon, double its damage on the dice. For a spell, you might double one of its numerical effects. Terrain. Attacking or casting a spell on a creature that is hiding at least half its body behind interposing terrain has disadvantage. If you can't see the creature at all due to its terrain, you can't target it. Creatures can only move half of the normal distance through terrain that hampers free movement, such as ice and deep mud. Again, really straightforward. If half of it is in cover, you have disadvantage. If it has total cover, you just can't attack it. Morale. Enemies who are reduced to half their ranks or half their hit points for a solo enemy flee if they fail a wisdom check of DC 15. For larger groups, the GM may make one check with their leader's modifier. This is great, as I say. It cuts down grindy encounters, and it's all randomized as well. They might hold, they might flee. Nothing is certain. Death. A character who goes to 0 hit points falls unconscious and is dying. Character who goes above 0 hit points wakes up and is no longer dying. The death timer. A dying character rolls 1d4 plus their con modifier, minimum 1 total on their turn. They die in that many rounds unless they are healed or stabilized. On each of the characters subsequent turns, that player rolls a d20. On a natural 20, the character rises with 1 hit point. As I said, I'm really pleased that that ruling is there. It creates a great feeling around the table when a character is on the brink of death and suddenly they get that second wind, they get that grit back, and they are back into the battle. Stabilize. An intelligent being can give first aid to a dying creature at close range. On a successful DC 15 intelligence check, the target stops dying but is still unconscious. Death. A character who perishes is retired from the game. It seems in this, death is currently final. Casting spells. Spellcasters use raw power of creation and destruction to bend reality, shaping it into the will of the gods or ambitions. Wizard magic is fickle, complicated, and volatile. Even the most learned mages tread carefully when reaching beyond the veil to grasp arcane energies. Priest magic is miraculous, sacred, and instinctive. Priests who offend their gods might lose the ability to cast spells until they can undertake penance. Casting. When you cast a spell, you invoke magic to cause an effect. Casting a spell takes your action. Characters with the spellcasting talent can cast spells. To cast wizard spells, you make a spellcasting check by rolling 1d20 plus your intelligence modifier. To make a priest spell, to cast a priest spell, you make a spellcasting check by rolling 1d20 plus your wisdom modifier. The DC to successfully cast a spell is 10 plus the spell's tier. So for first level spell it would be 11, second 12, etc, etc. So there's a chance that you might fail on casting a spell. Let us see what the results mean. Results. If you succeed on the spell casting check, the spell takes effect. If you fail your spell casting check, the spell does not take effect. You can't cast that spell again until you complete a rest. Interesting. So you don't have spell slots, but you have to make a check, and if you fail it, you need to take a rest before you can cast it again. Okay. So critical success. If you roll a natural 20 on your spellcasting check, you may double one of the spell's numerical effects. This remains in effect on a focus spell. So if you crit on a spell that you're concentrating on, it remains in effect until your next focus check. So it doesn't stay. It stays until you have to make a focus check. Critical fail. If you roll a natural 1 on your spellcasting check, the spell does not take effect. If it was a focus spell, the spell immediately ends. Wizard spell. If the spell was a wizard spell, you can't cast that spell again until you successfully complete a rest. You must also roll on the wizard mishap table corresponding to the spell's tier. Ooh. Pre-spells. If the spell was a pre-spell, your deity is greatly displeased and it revokes its power. You can't cast that spell again until you complete a ritualistic penance to your deity and successfully complete a rest. Penance. The GM determines the exact nature of the penance you must undertake based on your deity and alignment. Penance requires a holy quest, ritualistic atonement or a material sacrifice that you donate or destroy. Inadequate or subversive penance, such as donating your sacrifice to a party member, only displeases your deity further and makes the spell loss permanent. Wow. And there you go. If it was a first level spell, you would have to do a value of 5 gold. Wow. So this is interesting and I really, really like it. This means that if you have, for instance, sort of cure disease sort of spell, you can cast it. You don't have spell slots to cure everybody, but each time you cast it, you will have to make a spell casting check, and if you fail, you can't cast it again until you've had a rest. But even worse, if you critically fail, you lose the ability to cast it. It brings in a very interesting dynamic to spell casting. And we come to wizard mishaps. I love mishaps and critical fall. So tier 1 to 2, there is undoubtedly other tables in the rules that are being kickstarted, the 4 rules that are being kickstarted at the moment. So it's a D12 table, a devastation, explosion, refaction, your hand slipped, mind wound, discorporation, spellworm, harmonic failure, poof, the horror, energy surge, unstable conduit, and they're only going to get worse from there. I love this. We're going to go down to scrolls and wands. Using scrolls and wands contain magic spells. Spellcasters can use to cast these spells if the spell is on their spell list, even if they don't know the spell. To do so, they must succeed on a spell casting check with a DC of 10 plus the tier of the spell contained within the wand or the scroll. Treat this the same as normally spell casting with the following additions. Scrolls. After successful or failed casting attempt, the magical writing disappears. Scroll ceases to work. Wands. On a failed casting attempt, the wand stops functioning until you complete a rest. On a critical fail, the wand breaks and permanently ceases to work. The spellcaster incurs a mishap or penance as usual. So even using magic items could be hazardous. Spell attributes. So tiers, spells are classified according to their tiers, which range from 1 to 5. Range determines at what distance, close, near or far, you can deliver the spell's effect. Self-range means you can only target yourself. Again, really intuitive, very straightforward. Duration is how long the spell effects last. Spells can have an instant effect or last for several turns, rounds or longer. See focus for spells with a different focus duration. Overlapping effects of the same spell and the same target do not combine. The spell with the most powerful effect takes precedence, such as the spell with the longer remaining duration. That's good and very clear for people that like to try and sort of stack their things. Focus. Some spells last for as long as you focus. You can't cast other focus spells whilst focusing. You can end the focus spell at any time. To maintain focus, make a spell casting check at the start of your turn as if you were casting that spell. Success. The spell remains in effect until the start of your next turn. Failure. The spell ends if you were focusing, and you do not lose the ability to cast the spell. However, if you critically fail on a check to maintain focus, treat it as a standard critical fail. If you take damage or become distracted whilst focusing due to an earthquake, for example, you must immediately make a spellcasting check to maintain focus. I like that as well. It's just if you get distracted through damage or whatever, you have to make it. Spell lists. So fairly straightforward. I think you will perhaps recognize most of these. Priest tier 1, cure wounds, holy weapon, light, protection from evil, shield of faith, turn undead, augury, blind, deaf and bless, cleansing weapon, smite, zone of truth. Then wizard tier, alarm, burning hands, charm person, detect magic, featherfall, floating disc, hold portal, light, mage armor, magic missile, protection from evil, sleep. An acid arrow, alter self, detect thoughts, fixed object, hold person, invisibility, knock, levitate, mirror image, misty step, silence, web. This is really taking me back to those early D&D days, and it's glorious. The what I'm interested in is the detect. I mean, all of these are fairly sort of straightforward. If we look at, for instance, I suppose magic missile, one of the most classic spells here. This is interesting. You have advantage on your check to cast this spell. So it's not an automatic hit. Well, it is an automatic hit, but you still have to do a spell check. The range is far, and a glowing bolt of 4 streaks from your open hand, dealing 1d4 to one target. So it's not a direct carryover from 5th ed. So it is going to be worth, those of you who are playing, to double check your spells. Don't assume that they're going to do the same things that you are useful for. Shadowdark is a different system. Whilst it will automatically hit, you still have to make your spell casting check, but you do have advantage on it. But it only does 1d4 of damage. Protection from evil. So for the spell's duration, it's chaotic beings. So chaotic translates to sort of evil, and one would assume good translates to law. Sleep, let's see what this does. Spells fears the nearby cube extend. Choose a number of living creatures in the area up to your level. Those creatures fall asleep if they are level 2 or less. Injury or vigorously shaken and wakes them. Bearing in mind that you need to do a spell casting check before the spell goes off. Very good. So you can send basically your first level, 1 level 2 or less creature asleep. And we are coming to the end of it. Join the dark. This is important as well. As I say, you can download these rules for free if you go to the Arcane Library website. You can either find it on the website or go to their Kickstarter and sort of pick them up from there. I definitely recommend you doing it, but they've got a massive community as well. So you can see them in Discord. They go to conventions. Kelsey Dione, Shadowdark's creator, head of the Arcane Library, does a YouTube channel as well, and you can see that at youtube.com/the Arcane Library for video guides. There's a lot of very cool content out there that you'll be able to find through their socials. I've put their website link in the comment section below. And this is, we have to look sideways, the character sheet for it. You can see how nice, simple, intuitive it is with the stats and everything else and the gear slots. And how you can random character generator, you can literally roll here to create a random character very, very rapidly as well. Well, I've been nattering reading this out to you for coming up for 2 hours. I hope you have found it useful and insight into why I'm becoming obsessed with this game. I'm going to do another video. I won't be doing it live, but I will be recording another read through of the GM's Quickstarter for you to get a feel of that as well. You can go and download it yourself, but I kind of want to sort of reach out and sort of talk about this fabulous game. You can join our Discord as well. We've got a Shadowdark channel there, and we're looking to put some games together as soon as possible, really. So if you are curious about the system after listening to me, jump into our Discord, reach out, and we'll try and get some games going. In the meantime, I hope it's been useful. Hope you've enjoyed it, and maybe we will meet again very soon in the Shadowdark. For now, it's good night from me.